welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Ladi Akiri Gundwale, the headlines. Ukrainian shelling sets fuel storage ablaze in Russian-controlled shock task. President Vladimir Putin of Russia says the United States needs to force Kyiv to the negotiating table as the world faces the most dangerous decade since World War II. And Chief Executive of Baker Technologies, Aluk Barkta, to complete drone manufacturing plant in Ukraine in 2 years. Russian-installed authorities in Shakhtarsk say a Ukrainian shelling, that is, had set ablaze fuel tanks at the town's railway station and oil depot. The head of the Donetsk People's Republic Fire Service, Vladimir Murenkov, says 4 fuel tanks were burning at the railway station and another 3 were burning at the depot. Firefighters were seen putting out flames engulfing railway tank cars and a larger blaze at the oil depot. Mr. Murenkov says work to extinguish the fires continue at both locations. The town of Shakhtarsk in Russian-controlled Ukraine is just 40 kilometers from Donetsk, the capital of the People's Donetsk Republic, as proclaimed by the Russians. Ukrainian forces, some equipped with artillery supplied by the United States and other allies, have methodically shelled Russian fuel and ammunition bases as well as railway lines. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has a lot to say. In the last 24 hours, he's been speaking at the Valdai Discussion Club, which is a gathering of Russian specialists. Mr. Putin says the world faced the most dangerous decade since World War II, accusing what he cast as a declining West of engaging in nuclear blackmail against Russia. He warns that the world is facing a chain of global conflicts, but a new world order is being formed right now. He adds that the new reality implies changes in the composition of the United Nations Security Council, which would reflect the variety of the world's regions.
Запад почувствовал себя победителем и провозгласил однополярное мироустройство, в котором только его воля...
The disintegration of the Soviet Union destroyed the balance of geopolitical powers. The West felt it was the victor and declared a monopolar world order in which only its will, its culture, its interest have the right to exist. Now, this historic period of Western dominance in world affairs is coming to an end. We are standing at a historic frontier. In front of us is probably the most dangerous, unpredictable, and together with it, important decade since the end of World War II. The West is unable to unilaterally rule humankind, but is desperately trying to. But most world nations are unwilling to accept it. The state of things in the world will soon depend on Asia, Africa, and Latin America, much more than it is taught today.
Будущее мировое устройство формируется на наших глазах, и в этом мировом устройстве мы должны выслушать всех.
And in the meantime, the Russian president says Moscow is ready for talks to end the conflict in Ukraine, but said Kyiv was not prepared to sit down at the negotiating table. He says, quote, "It is very easy to solve this problem if Washington gives a signal to Kyiv to change its position and solve the problem peacefully." However, there have been no peace talks between the two sides since attempts at a negotiated settlement fell apart in the first week of the conflict, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has explicitly ruled out a negotiated deal with Russia.
Мы же много раз сказали, что мы готовы к...
It's not a question about us. We've said it many times that we're ready for negotiations. And I repeated it when I was speaking in the Kremlin recently. But the leaders of the Kyiv regime decided not to continue with negotiations with Russia. Although in truth, the deciding word remains with those who implement this policy in Washington. It is very easy to solve this problem if Washington gives a corresponding signal to Kyiv to change its position and solve the problem peacefully.
Дать соответствующий сигнал в Киев, что они
And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stood outside in the dark beside the wreckage of a downed drone and vowed that widespread Russian attacks on power plants would not break Ukrainian spirits. Abandoning his usual indoor setting, or better still, his usual nightly address, Mr. Zelensky says that Kyiv had shot down 23 drones in the last 2 days. Russia has aimed dozens of missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles at Ukraine's electricity-generating network in the last 2 weeks, causing major damage and triggering blackouts.
Спільними силами нас не зламають обстріли. Страшніше ворожих ракет у нашому небі почути ворожий гімн на нашій.
Shelling will not break us. To hear the enemy's anthem on our land is scarier than the enemy's rocket in our sky. We are not afraid of darkness. The darkest time for us are not the times without light, but those without will. Our military is strong, volunteers are tireless, partners are reliable, and people are indomitable. The Second Army of the World War will get smaller and smaller. There will be more and more losses for the enemy. I am sure that hostile propaganda does not work. Provocations do not work. Threats do not scare. Any tough winter will not scare us. We know that the darkest night becomes the dawn.
In response to Russian claims that Ukraine could deploy a so-called dirty bomb, which Ukraine denies, the head of the UN's nuclear watchdog has confirmed that the organization plans to send inspectors in the coming days to 2 Ukrainian sites at Kyiv's request. The move to send inspectors follows a statement by a senior Russian officer that institutes in Ukraine linked to the nuclear industry were engaged in preparations to produce such a bomb. Dirty bombs are laced with nuclear material.
We are aware that the Russian Federation has filed an official complaint in line with the provisions of Article 6 regarding allegations of biological weapon programs in Ukraine. As High Representative Nakamitsu informed the Council in March and May of this year, the United Nations is not aware of any such biological weapons programs. This remains the case today.
The Russian Federation has repeatedly spread disinformation, including wild claims involving dirty bombs, chemical weapons, and offensive biological research. How much more of this nonsense do we have to endure?
I'm going to keep my remarks short because, frankly, this meeting is a waste of everyone's time. Russia has called us here once again for the sole purpose of spreading disinformation. We all know these claims are pure fabrications brought forth without a shred of evidence. And I would even venture to say the Russian delegation knows these charges are fabricated, but they dutifully carry out marching orders from President Putin. All Russia has are bizarre conspiracies that are no more credible today than when they first brought it to this council 6 months ago. So while I believe this meeting is a colossal waste of time, and we should decide just how much of our time we allow Russia to waste, I'm glad this council has the chance to see Russia's disinformation campaign for what it is. An attempt to distract from the atrocities Russian forces are carrying out in Ukraine, and a desperate tactic to justify an unjustifiable war.
Let's talk now to Associate Professor, Intelligence Studies, head of the Ukraine program at the Norwegian Defense University College in Oslo, Tom Rosset, Associate Professor. Thank you for your time, Tom. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I want to start from what we heard last there, a colossal waste of everybody's time because this is disinformation. But both sides are playing this game. Both sides are launching propaganda war against each other. It's very difficult to know who's telling the truth in this case. But I want to also mention the fact that President Putin seems to have changed his mind about peace. And says Russia is willing to discuss peace. What do you think is behind that?
First, I think that the allegations are from both sides, yes, but the truth is not sort of in the middle between Moscow and Kyiv. It's far closer to Kyiv than it is to Moscow, as we've seen so far during this war. But on Putin's wish for peace talks, that's on Russia's demands, and he just annexed illegally for the territories in Ukraine and wants to keep them. So he has his ultimatum and wants Kyiv to bend the knee. So it's not a peace negotiation, it's not a peace proposal, it's a demand that he wants Ukraine to accept, and that's also connected to that he's weaker on the front line now. Russia is losing territory. Ukraine is on the offensive, both in the south and east. So I think this is just to win time, and it's just to portray himself as a peace negotiator.
Now, one thing that the Russians seem to have leverage over is this Black Sea Grain Initiative, which is expected to expire on November the 19th or thereabouts, 120 days from when it was initially negotiated, except it is renewed. As we both know, under this program, Ukraine has been able to export a great deal of the grain that it produced within the last year. But if, as the indications are, there seem to be no talks about renewing this grain deal, and that could spell trouble, couldn't it?
Yes, Russia has some demands connected to the continuation of grain exports from Ukraine. A lot of ships are now stuck around Turkey, waiting further shipments. Due to Russia's demand that it wants the sanctions from the West to be lifted on certain issues before they continue the export of Ukrainian grain. So they're trying to control the door and use this as an excuse not to allow exports unless their demand are met. So they are in control of the grain export, absolutely.
Let's look at other things. It does appear as if there is some kind of weird balance in all of this. Europe was expected to suffer a winter of discontent, but from all the reports we have, it's not yet been as cold as most people thought it could be, and therefore the consumption of gas and energy supplies has not been at the level that had been expected. That has brought some calm to the populations in the European countries so far, and that has had some kind of effect on prices. But there is still disagreement within the EU over the question of price caps on supplies, particularly from Russia. And Russia has said anybody who caps its prices will get no supplies. Does this give Europe leverage, do you think? Because they're not using as much as they thought they would?
It's fortunate that the winter is delayed a bit, and there's a heating period for at least a week or two more, and that will keep the storage still full when it comes to gas, for example. So yes, that will make the winter easier, and the storage capacity is full about in Europe, so it's they're fairly good prepared for the winter, and it's good that it's delayed. So it doesn't, and Moscow's hope is that the winter will be tough, and that the split in Europe will erupt, and you will get a weaker support for Ukraine. But I don't see that happening this winter, perhaps next winter.
Let me ask you, Tom, about two things, about two countries, rather. The two largest contributors to Ukraine in terms of military aid and weapons are the United States and the United Kingdom. Now, maybe not coincidentally, both of them have some serious political events coming up. In the case of the UK, it's already happened and it's continuing, which is the fact that it's had 3 prime ministers in 7 weeks. And at this point in time, it does look like its new leader is not exactly a veteran of foreign affairs, even though he has already spoken to Volodymyr Zelensky. On the other side of it, you've got the United States. In the course of next week, there's going to be a midterm election in the United States. And there are those who have said, well, the Republicans are likely to take one, if not both houses of Congress away from the Democrats. And they've indicated that they will review how much they're spending on Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. Is there cause for worry here?
Not with the UK. I think the UK is on both sides of the political spectrum. They're very solid in their support of weapons towards Ukraine. So although may not be that experienced in foreign policy, the stance is tough from the UK, and they will continue to support. On the US, yes, it's a difficult political situation with the polarization there, and maybe the Republicans will control one or both houses of Congress, and that could affect the large weapon supplies from the US. But I think the Republicans also will continue this. So it might be an adjustment, but not a big shift, I think.
Indeed. All right, then. Thank you so much, Associate Professor Tom Rosette of the Norwegian Defence University College in Oslo. Thank you for your time this morning, and you have yourself a pleasant weekend ahead.
Thank you. You too.
Coming up after the break, Russia says no decision has been made on extending the Black Sea grain deal. Details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying tuned. The United States says it will stop developing nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missiles, and that's according to Pentagon documents, in spite of senior military officials publicly recommending keeping them. Under President Donald Trump's administration, the military made a decision in 2018 to develop a new nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile with a focus on the threat from Russia. The Biden administration says it's reviewed the sea-launched cruise missile program and that it was unnecessary and would be cancelled because the United States already has the means to deter limited nuclear use. But U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the military did not need the sea-launched cruise missile program because there was already enough capability in the nuclear inventory.
Our inventory of nuclear weapons is significant. And so we determined as we looked at our inventory that we did not need that capability. We have a lot of capability in our nuclear inventory. And I don't think this sends any message to Putin. He understands what our capability is. And so, we'll continue to move forward. We have not seen anything to indicate that Putin has made a decision to use a dirty bomb, nor have we seen any indications that the Ukrainians are planning such a thing. The Ukrainians have, in fact, their leadership have indicated to us that that's not in their plans.
Now, you talk to Ukrainian officials repeatedly. You're an expert on ground warfare as a retired four-star.
Thank you.
Well, one just on the Russia strategic nuclear exercise. Is there any concern that that could be a cover for a strike, a nuclear strike inside Ukraine? Are you confident that that's not what this is?
It's something we continue to watch. and we haven't seen anything to cause us to believe at this point that that is some kind of cover activity.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Turkish defense company Beka is planning to complete the construction of its manufacturing plant in Ukraine in 2 years after the company became highly renowned for its drone success in thwarting Russian forces. The aerial drones supplied to Ukraine by Beka were instrumental in Ukraine's defense against Russian armor and anti-aircraft systems in the first few weeks of the Russian invasion. Its Beka TB2 drone gained so much prominence with the public that Ukrainians composed a song about it, and some allies launched unprecedented crowd-funded campaigns to buy more.
The Secretary General has not received any request pursuant to paragraph 6G of the note or otherwise that supplements or modifies the nature and scope of the work done by the Security Council Affairs Division in the preparation of the...
All right, then let's talk now to John Mekwawa. We'll wait for the correct one of that drone soundbite. Ini, morning.
Good morning.
Of course, I mean, Beka, who is doing drones, are going to complete their plant in Ukraine because there's money to be made, actually.
Yes, of course.
There's always money to be made, regardless
even when
of what's
the war
happening.
is going on.
Absolutely. So let's look at this. Volkswagen has reported a fall in third-quarter profits after taking a hit from suspending production in Russia and the listing of its premium sports car brand
Porsche. Yes,
everybody in Nigeria knows Porsche.
And not everybody owns
one, though. This is a case of you bid a bit and now you're paying the price, is it?
Yes, it is, because there's a price for everything. And this is expected because last year, Volkswagen actually supplied over 200,000, vehicles to Russia. So, I mean, and that's more than 2% of their global market. So if about 2% of the global market is out, then we should expect that
there'll be a hit on the prices.
There'll be a hit. Even though they are forecasting that their revenue at the end of the year is going to be higher, but I don't know who is buying, that market share that Russia was occupying before. So I don't know what their plan is, but I mean, this is coming, and they also had that from the listing, because they had the IP of the Porsche, and of course that cost some money, all of the bureaucracy and the registering,
and to all of that.
Exactly, that. So Volkswagen is they're hoping for better days. I know Netflix too was around this, and they are recovering. They have not fully recovered. Talking about companies that have received or that have been hit because they closed shop in Russia. So while Russia is feeling the pinch, and Russia is trying to develop its domestic auto industry, the companies, the corporates are also feeling the pinch also. But I mean, they don't sound bothered whether that's real or not. But
well, there seems to be the fact that even when this conflict ends, many of them will not be able to return to Russia because, as we both know and we've been reporting, the Russians are developing alternatives.
They are developing alternatives, and they have set a lot of money for both the aviation and the auto industry. And already, the Russians, they can be very determined. They are also working, because one of the other problems that they had in that industry, or they still have the problem, is the little bolts and nuts, the supplies and all of that. All those parts were also suspended. Indeed. They are not sending it to them. So Russians have started working on how to develop all of that. They set out some money for that, and they can be determined, and they're pushing towards it. So even if the war ends this year, next year, there's no assurance, even if the sentiments...
Guys will be able to return to Russia and take back the market.
And take back the markets, And one of the things that just comes to my mind, I think we have to pause. Remember those jets?
Yes.
That were seized. I think we need to find out how Russians are maintaining
them and how they're using them.
Yes, because the parts are supposed to be imported, but
we don't know how they are getting them And if they are continuing to
if
use
they are
it,
continuing
good point you made there. Now, Ireland has removed Russia and Belarus from its short-stay visa waiver scheme. This was expected.
This was expected.
People have been threatening this for so long anyway.
Yes, and a lot of other European countries have already done it.
Right.
So I guess Ireland is just following. But I think the other story there, we talked about Belarus silently becoming a victim, kind of.
Yes.
Because it seems that whatever sanction comes on Russia also falls on them, not even the secondary sanction.
So it's on our primary sanctions.
Primary sanction, because it's almost like I said they're the ones who were. So that's why Ireland would just note that it's Russia and Belarus that will not have that short stay, because normally it used to be that if you have been to the UK or you have a visa in the UK around that, then you could go into Ireland.
Of course, Ireland.
Exactly, yeah. But now they're demanding that Russia and Belarusians will have to get Irish visas.
Irish visas. Now, the Russian ruble, I was discussing this with Ladi yesterday, the Russian ruble is now strengthening. Yesterday it was loosening, now it's strengthening. Perhaps because they're anticipating something?
Yes, there's going to be a cut. There's going to be, well, not cuts anymore. They want to end the cuts. So remember when the war started, I mean, Russians are they just hiked their rates by 20%.
Very, very high.
Very high, at once. We keep talking about, 0.5% and 100%.
75 basis points,
yes,
50 basis points.
Yeah, they did 20%. So what is happening now is they're trying to find a balance, and the reason, but I think by last week or earlier this week, the ruble was surging because of taxes. It was tax period.
Right.
So there was a lot of demand because
all taxes must be paid in rubles. So.
Yes, so it was surging. So just when that effect wanted to wane down, then we have this, and analysts are predicting that they're going to end that tax hike cuts, and they maybe try to stabilize and do what the normal economies are doing now.
Yes,
but I mean, we just have to watch and see what they do. But because with Russia, you can never 100% predict.
All right, thanks, Ini. Of course, Ini will have the details of other sports, business stories, pardon me, in Business Morning and then Business Incorporated. But for now, thank you, Ini.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Foreign Ministry spokeswoman in Russia, that is, Maria Zakharova, also says the provisions of the Black Sea grain deal to ease Russian agricultural and fertilizer exports were not being met, and that Moscow was yet to make a decision on whether the agreement should be extended. She says the West had not taken sufficient steps to ease sanctions on Russia's logistics, payments, and insurance industries to facilitate Russia's exports. The deal struck in July for 120 days is set to expire in the second half of November.
In the context of the second part of the deals regarding Russian grain and Russian fertilizers, which we happily will supply to those countries who need them, the accounts of the appropriate bank are simply blocked and operations cannot be completed. Payments are not possible because accounts are blocked, and they are blocked due to Western sanctions. Despite all assurances that there are no problems, the problems do exist.
And we can go back to that drone story where we said the company making drones, Baker, is planning to complete the construction of its manufacturing plant in Ukraine in 2 years after the company became highly renowned for its drone success in thwarting Russian forces. The aerial drones supplied to Ukraine by the company were instrumental in Ukraine's defense against Russian armor and anti-aircraft systems in the first few weeks of the Russian invasion. Its Barakatar TB2 drone gained so much prominence with the public that Ukrainians composed a song about it, and some allies launched unprecedented crowd-funded campaigns to buy more.
In Ukraine, we have made a government-to-government agreement between Turkey and Ukraine to support the Turkish investors in the field of aerospace industries. In that regard, we made a plan and starting design of our facilities. We bought our investment land and our plan is moving ahead. So we fully support Ukraine's war in its independence, and we really value their struggle, and our hearts are with them. So we never stopped our plans. We will do our facilities there, and our plans are moving ahead. Right now, we have designed the architectural design. The detailed design phase is finished, and we will move ahead with the construction actually. But of course, because of the current conditions, there might be within 2 years. Within 2 years, we would like to finish it. On the turbine engine side, we as well procure these engines from Ukraine, from Motorsik, and from Ivchenko Progress companies. Our cooperation is going very well, is moving ahead. We equip our Akıncı platforms with Ukrainian engines, and also our unmanned fighter platform Kızıl Elma is equipped with Motorsik engines.
Let's talk now to Dr. Dakwa Thomas of the International Relations Department of the Lagos State University, founding member of the Association of Foreign Relations Professionals of Nigeria. Good morning to you. Thank you for your time. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Ladi.
Are you surprised, or are you wondering what the motivation behind the request or the demand by Russia that the United States get Kyiv to come to the negotiating table?
Well, there are so many variables or so many factors we can attribute to that. And I want to believe that, one, the global condemnation as a result of the fact that one, let me say global condemnation. Two, the agenda or the plan, the Russian plan is not working as proposed or as projected. They are missing it. They probably have thought that maybe in 2 months or 1 month, with their ammunitions, with their missiles and everything, Ukraine will have become history by now. They will have annexed Ukraine. So they are not achieving that objective. So that's number two. And then number three, they have been stretched beyond their capacity, their capability. They have exhausted most of their weaponry and armaments, and they have seen that it is a futile, at the end of the day, it's going to be a futile adventure to have started this war. They are looking for a way out, and obviously they know that the only country that they can appeal to, or the only country they can talk to that is in the same category with them, is the United States. They don't want to descend so low as to be discussing negotiation or dialogue with Ukraine. And Turkey is disappointed, about what they did initially when Turkey organized a roundtable conference or negotiating discussion. But now they are talking to US, and they see that they have a lot of things to discuss, and that's why they want to do. But I think that cannot work. It won't work. I don't see it working. I don't
Why
see it
not?
working. So
why don't you see it working?
Because psychologically, they are going to be operating psychologically, based on what I have said, that they have nearly exhausted most of their ammunitions. They have there is serious global condemnation now, even at the United Nations level. And then they are the mobilization, which they started, is not working according to plan because they have no equipment. And every day we keep seeing their soldiers complaining seriously of lack of water and lack of ammunition. So it's not going to work because the trick is this: they want to negotiate from the point of strength. But you know, if you are saying that you have annexed 4 regions of Ukraine, and none is apart from Kherson, which is still being contested. You know, and Zaporizhia, where they have some soldiers in the nuclear plant. You know, and I believe that it's as a result of that they occupied the nuclear plant. So if you are saying you have annexed 4, and then there is none that is fully under your occupation, none of those 4. Is it Luhansk? Is it Donetsk? Is it Kherson? Is it Zaporizhia? No, none of them is seriously. In fact, the Ukrainians have gained some kind of momentum and some kind of advantage that they have seen. Their inadequacy, they have seen the military inadequacy of Russia. And that is why they are even discussing, they are contemplating that they are even going to include the recovery of Crimea in their territorial adventurism. So it is that bad. They know, they have the intelligence, information, they have everything at their disposal. I mean, the Ukrainians. So they know how weak the Russians are, apart from nuclear capabilities, which they cannot use. So they know that all these missiles and everything, yes, you know, so they know, and that was why they had to go for the kamikaze drones, you know, from Iran.
Yeah.
And they are exhausting. They are exhausting those ones as well. They are exhausting most of their equipment. Most of their equipment have been destroyed by the Ukrainians. So they want to operate from the level of strength by negotiating that, okay, we have 4 of this territory. Which ones do you want to concede, or what do we have to take in return for whatever? But the US knows everything. It will not negotiate with them now. And the Ukrainians are saying they are not even ready to negotiate. Initially, the Ukrainians were attending the meetings that were being held in Turkey. But now they said they are not interested because they have seen, based on intelligence information, based on intelligence information and everything. So they have seen their inadequacies. So that's why they are saying they are not going to negotiate. You know, they are not going to negotiate. So I think that asking US to now intervene, asking US indirectly and diplomatically to intervene or to talk, because I can see Putin saying that it is only US that can talk positively to the Ukrainians, and the US is not going to do that, definitely.
The other thing, of course, is that the Black Sea Grain Initiative, when it was agreed in July, there was international relief because it allowed Ukraine to export much-needed grain, particularly to developed and developing countries where it proved to be the difference between starvation in many instances and being able to satisfy the citizenry, particularly areas in Asia, in Africa, and so on. But that deal is now up for renewal, and the Russians have all but indicated that, you know, they're not prepared to renew it without some adjustments. They placed some conditions on the table. But coming from the angle that you've come, do you think perhaps even the Ukrainians themselves are not even ready to negotiate any renewal or anything about this, and that it might be difficult for the Russians to reimpose the blockade on the ships carrying grain away from Ukraine?
Well, there is, I'll be lying if I say it will not affect Ukraine. But for now, Ukraine is getting some funds from some of his allies, most of his allies, in fact, all his allies. So Ukraine is getting some funds, so they are being funded. And now, yes, I know that the grain will have given them added revenue. Unfortunately, if the Russians should now say, okay, we are not going to renew the deal, then it's unfortunate. But I don't think it will affect the Ukrainians more. You know, let us just know for a fact that anytime Russia is fighting any war, humanitarianism or anything is not in their reckoning. They don't even care about humanity. They don't care about anything called human beings. Because this kind of war should not have escalated to this level if they had taken note. If they had been very careful to ensure that the collateral damage is minimized. You can see, I read a report that the Ukrainians are telling the Russian soldiers in Kherson that, look, you have to leave now, otherwise you'll be trapped. You know, meaning they don't want to kill them. They don't want to kill them. That is the spirit. But the Russians don't care. You can see they are touching energy infrastructure. They are putting the whole country, the entire country, knowing that winter is coming, they are putting the entire country in serious condition. I mean, this is not war. This is not how to fight war. These days, you have precision equipment. You have precision armaments. You don't keep destroying civilian buildings. You don't keep. It is a sacrosanct. It is a sacrosanct agreement. It is a sacrosanct responsibility that civilians should be, as much as possible, be shielded away from war. They are not. I mean, they should not be victims of this war. You have soldiers, you have everybody, even your soldiers. The Ukrainians are not even ready to kill them. That's why they are warning them that, look, you better leave as of now. Leave now. Because if you are trapped, then they have no option than to kill. But they don't want to kill. You know? So if they are not, for instance, what will the Russians gain if they don't renew the deal? Because this grain is useful for, is consumed by almost 65% of humanity around the globe. You know, so why do you want to starve people? Why do you want to starve people? And this one is not about starving the Ukrainians now. You are even extending it to, you are making it a global affair. Why?
Indeed.
What for?
Indeed.
What is it that? When you are fighting war, there must be some areas that you have to leave to make sacred. You know, there must be some areas you have to make sacred. But when you now believe that everything is fair in war, then it's unfair. That's unfair. I believe that the war has gone beyond the limit for the Russians. And that is why they are begging. I believe they are begging for negotiation.
They would contest that, Dr. Thomas, that they are begging, but I guess we'll leave it there for today. We'll come back, of course, to this topic because there's still so much to discuss about it. Dr. Dapo Thomas of the International Relations Department at Lagos State University, thank you for your time this morning, and do have a pleasant weekend ahead.
Thank you for having me.
Still to come on the program, Kyiv residents get creative amidst power cuts with survival kits in lifts. Please stay on with us. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. Let's take a look at some of the sports news out of this conflict. Ukrainian boxer Vasily Lomachenko is returning to the ring tomorrow after being at the center of countless battles defending his country against Russia. The two-time Olympic gold medalist was abroad in February when he heard that his nation's worst fears had come true. Russia's military had invaded and was moving fast. A former world champion in 3 weight classes, the 34-year-old lightweight said his experience in the ring helped him while he was serving, but only up to a point. Mr. Lomachenko takes on the undefeated Germain Ortiz at Madison Square Garden in New York, where a victory will get him a shot at the undisputed lightweight champion of the world, Devin Haney, as his next opponent. And World Anti-Doping Agency WADA President Vitold Banka has warned the Russian anti-doping agency RUSADA that it will use its rights to take Kamila Valieva's case directly to the Court of Arbitration for Sports unless the matter is resolved promptly. Banka had confirmed that WADA has put RUSADA under formal notice after expressing concerns over the ongoing delay in the verdict of an investigation into the teenage figure skater's failed drug test. His comments on social media comes just days after WADA urged RUSADA to reverse its decision to keep the ruling of the Valieva case confidential. RUSADA has opted to keep the case private due to Valieva being 15 as at the time she failed the drug test and therefore a protected person under the World Anti-Doping Code. And finally, on the program, Kyiv residents are getting creative amidst power cuts. Russian strikes on Ukraine's power infrastructure have wreaked havoc on the Ukrainian capital's hundreds of high-rises, prompting Kyiv residents like Loganov to leave bags of essential supplies in their lifts. Local officials have warned locals of the danger of using lifts during air raid sirens, but taking the stairs is not a viable option for many Kyivians who need to climb 15 or 20 floors to reach their apartment. Loginov shared the contents of the bag, which include drinking water, energy bars, valerian pills, a torch, and bubble blowers. Mr. Loginov's wife, Ludmila, says that the horrors of the invasion have brought the residents in the buildings closer together. In the building next door, residents have also left a box of supplies in their lift, including water, snacks, and plastic bags. That's where we end this program this morning. Thanks for being with us. My name is Ladi Akeridoluale. There's an update on stories coming from the war in Ukraine throughout the day, particularly on the World Today at 5 o'clock. But for now, do have yourselves a pleasant weekend ahead. Good morning.